Hello, welcome to the Brand and Buzz stage. We've got next panel coming up talking about the future of temporary staff in the events market. By all means, you're more than welcome to join the conversation by asking your questions, and the panelists hopefully will be able to answer those as well. So just to introduce you, to chair the panel will be Greg Lusk from Liveforce.
Thank you.
Then we'll have Susanna from Joan Chase, Manuela Cadarso from Unicorn Events, Kim Levine from Hells Angels.
And Nime's
Did I say that right?
Yeah.
And Nime. There you go.
All right, lovely. We got enough chairs? Yeah. Awesome.
And I'll pass the microphone to you guys.
Lovely. Great to see people here. This for us is just a really passionate thing we're about. I feel like I've got the dream panel today put together to talk about this subject. So before we sort of jump into it, I just want to allow them to just quickly introduce themselves, just so you guys know who they are and what sort of voice they're representing in this discussion. So Susanna.
Hi, I'm Susanna Rynehart, a partner at Jones Chase. I've done some work around employment status and the gig economy, so really interested in where this is going.
I need to speak out loud.
Yeah.
My name's Manuela. I'm from Unicorn Events, senior project manager there, and I guess my role in this, I book event staff for all of our events and for our clients to deliver projects.
Lovely.
Hi, I'm Kim. I'm from Hells Angels. We're an events and staffing agency. We've been in the business for 22 years, so we've got a really good understanding of providing staffing, booking staffing, and the way that the industry has changed over the years.
Hi guys, my name is Nima Rayaz. I'm from the Staff Room, which is the staffing agency from BD Network. And I'm a presenter, I do brand ambassador work, I do event management work. So I've worked with lots of different campaigns like Nintendo UK, Samsung, Cadbury's Chocolate. So I'm one of the showmen,
Yeah,
basically.
You've been on the floor, you've lived it as a freelancer.
Yeah,
it's a great
exactly,
experience.
yeah,
Lovely.
definitely.
Cool. Well, the way I want to just kick off this debate actually is, there's a lot of stuff happening in this space at the moment. And I think one of the biggest things we're seeing is platforms like Couples or Gigster. And, I just heard the other week that Uber is actually now exploring doing a test trial of actually Uber Works, where, people can get access to event work through the platform. So, it's just really interesting, first and foremost, to get your opinion on that. And I think, we can start with you, Kim, are all these platforms a threat to a staffing agency? Is it going to basically put you guys out of business in the future?
It's a really interesting question, and I think to a degree it is a threat, but I think there are different types of event staffing, different sort of levels, and I think that something like Uber and Gigster is potentially a threat to a certain level of staffing. We've seen over the last 10, 15 years a massive commoditization of staffing, where it's all about high volume and low price. And I think certainly for clients who are looking for that, then potentially you would go to an Uber or something like that. But certainly where we sit in the market, we're all about curated brand ambassadors. They are handpicked, they are trained, they are developed, they are part of a working team, they are chosen specifically for that brand. And I think in that world, you're not going to get that from an Uber.
Yeah.
And then you're also not going to get the staffing expertise. So when a client comes to us, they don't necessarily just want the people. They want to know, what do they need? How will it work? What will the consumer journey be? What will the level of engagement be? And I think that needs to be provided by an agency who have expertise in that. And you can't get that through something like an Uber or a Gigster.
Yeah. And I guess, Manuela, you're sort of on the side of an agency that uses often staffing agencies on things. Would you pick and match depending on the type of event you're doing? Would you sometimes be using these platforms or sometimes using the staffing agencies? Or why would you continue to use staffing agencies?
Yeah, so, following on from what Kim was saying, when I have a client that comes to me, say it's experiential or it's a conference or whatever, the people on the ground are the face of what the client is trying to do. So we would always it does depend on the type of job that it is. We do prefer to work with agencies such as Kim's, just because you have that reassurance that it is going to be more curated. We can meet the staff ahead of time, and actually that training that goes into it as well. If they're there representing a brand, we feel strongly they need to be trained on that brand. Otherwise, no one's going to buy from someone that doesn't know what they're talking about. However, couples, for example, we have used them when you need a quick turnaround of staff. We needed some people to do some flyering. You don't necessarily need to know much about the brand if you're just giving out a leaflet. So in that instance, it is really good to have that resource available to you.
Cool. And I guess, Nima, you work for these agencies. You're the man on the floor doing these jobs. You know, would you consider signing up to Uberwork? So what are the pros and cons, I guess, of working for an agency and, you know, looking for work through these other platforms?
I would say the biggest thing for me, as someone who's done like flyering or brand ambassador work or event managing, or right at the top, you know, where you're presenting, you're a face of a brand and stuff, I think loyalty for me is the biggest thing, and it's a teamwork, you know. So if I've joined a particular agency, my thing with the agency is that, you know, I'm in safe hands. They're looking after me. They're making sure that, you know, that I've signed up to them and I'm giving them 110%, that they're going to give me 110%, that, you know, that they're going to support me if, you know, a situation occurs, you know, live on the floor where someone gets injured, or if you're going to be running late, or, you know, anything can happen, the world that we live in. And I think it's making sure that you have that relationship with your booker or your agent or the staff member, etc., that, you know, that they've got your back and, you know, you've got their back, so that both of you working together can produce and provide, you know, the perfect performance, if you like, if you want to call it that.
Because I don't think you get that through a platform, would you?
No, exactly. You know, so for me, from my understanding, I mean, I'm all for new companies and new innovation, from whether it's Uber or Amazon or whoever, but I feel like that you don't want to lose that whole kind of face-to-face value kind of approach. You know, it almost feels like, I mean, yeah, we all use Uber. I use Uber all the time, but it always still feels very kind of alien because I don't know who they are. If that makes sense. I've never seen I haven't been into their office and gone, oh, hi, you know, how you doing? Or that's the person that books me for a job, or you know, we've gone to training together, or you've done jobs abroad, etc., etc. So I think it would be interesting to see how they approach that whole kind of
culture, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so it's that
people,
relationship that, you know, as an agent, as you guys have probably booked staff before, that you know that, okay, if I've got a new campaign coming, I'm not just going to use an algorithm to just book a blonde-haired, blue-eyed person or a brown-haired person. That, oh, I know that person. They're really passionate. They're really good at tech stuff, or they're really good at food stuff. You know, it's that whole relationship thing, which I think it'd be interesting to see what they do. Yeah. That's for me. It's that whole kind of relationship.
Yeah. I was going to say, I think the relationship is such a good point, because the entire impact of using people to engage with your customers and consumers is about forming those relationships. And I think it's interesting, if you make it fully platform-based and fully algorithm, what happens to those relationships? There's no relationships from the top, and therefore you're just not going to have any relationships in the field. And then really, is there any point in having anybody there?
Yeah.
You know, you may as well just have a robot handing some stuff out.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, you know, just to pull Susanna in here, it's, you know, how are these platforms employing these people? How are they doing it legally? You know, who's responsible for them? You know, who's looking after the workforce, I think, essentially?
Well, I mean, so I just want to comment on the Uber case, which has Uber's whole premise is that everybody that works for them is self-employed. Actually, they have certainly hit a marketplace there, because they were able to engage huge numbers of people to work for them in that way. As you know, they were challenged, and they have gone all the way to the court. Well, they're heading to the Court of Appeal, and they have all the people that are working for them in the UK have been found to be workers. So I think Uber are definitely being very innovative in terms of looking at the way people want to work, but actually it's at the expense of the individual. So they don't really, so getting back to your looking after the individual person, they're not necessarily looking after the individual. They want the individual to be completely responsible for everything themselves. Unfortunately, as you know, that has caused people to say, well, actually, we are having our rights infringed, and we are working really under your direction, under your control. We have very little say. And that's the key thing with being self-employed. You need to have your own, you are directing what you do, you
It's
are
in the name,
controlling
self-employed, yeah.
how you work. And we've got a massive blurring of lines on that. And as you can see in the UK, recent case law said all of these organisations that are approaching employment of individuals in this way are actually losing, and individuals are being found to be workers. So, the Uber model is self-employed, but actually the court model is saying, no, you're a worker. And that means that they're entitled to things like holiday pay, which has massive financial ramifications for companies. So,
cool. And I guess, throwing the question back around that, how are agencies employing people in the industry? And I guess what are the pros and cons for the agencies having self-employed people or people on the payroll? How does that affect agency life? I guess, question to you both, really.
Well, I think from an events agency perspective, there's more and more freelancers, as we call them, and it's such a volatile market. 1 minute as an agency you can be super, super busy, so you rely on this pool of freelancers or temporary event staff to come and support you when it's busy, but then as a business you can't then afford to keep a full team when it's not as busy. So from an events agency perspective, it's really handy to have temporary event staff available to us. So yeah, that's it.
Yeah. So, Kim, I know you're really passionate about how crew or staff get paid, and agencies do it in different ways. How do Hells Angels do it?
Yeah, so I think it's interesting looking at the sort of freelancers within an office model versus staff in the field. So all of our staff are employees, so they're on PAYE. And then connected to that, we look after their employers' NI, their holiday pay, pension. They are auto-enrolled when it becomes relevant. And then they also have access to statutory sick pay and maternity pay, depending on, obviously, how long they've worked with us and how much work that they've done. That obviously is a lot more expensive than having a self-employed person. If you have a self-employed person, you pay them a flat rate and then they look after everything themselves. So it's quite an interesting change that's happened in the market. We used to have a selection of self-employed and PAYE people, and now everybody's PAYE. And it was interesting changing over because a lot of our team did not want to move. We work with a lot of actors, a lot of performers who are self-employed, and so they actually are now self-employed in some of their work and employed with us. So I think they definitely need to be protected. I think that's extremely, extremely important. But there is certainly something to be said that it's not necessarily a one-size-fits-all. And we have people who work with us a couple of times a week and have done so for the past 5 years. And we've also got people who work with us once or twice a year because they're in, a faraway place and there isn't much work. And so it potentially treating them in the same way as if as if they were full-time employees has its challenges.
Nima, I mean, you work in the market, you work for an agency yourself. Are you on payroll? Are you self-employed? How have you found it? What are people on the street saying working on all these jobs?
So I am a performer, so I do acting, dancing, presenting and stuff. So I am self-employed, and I do have an agent who takes care of that particular stuff. Being self-employed, I have a UTR number, etc., etc. But with promo, if you like, if that's what you want to call it, I am obviously PAYE. So a lot of the agencies that I do work for, they all go down the route of PAYE, which is I actually find it quite beneficial because when it comes to dealing with my tax at the end of the year, it's a lot easier to work out. Instead of having going, well, I did this for this person and this for this person and this for this person, I can just literally split it right down the middle and go, this was all my self-employed stuff and this was all my PAYE stuff, which has already been handled. And it has that support, again, of, holiday pay, sick pay. And it's, again, that whole situation of you feel like you're being taken care of. Coming back to your point where you were saying about, self-employed and how important it is for people to remember that, being self-employed, you have to take care of yourself. You have to be, you have to say to yourself, well, I have to do everything. I think for a lot of us, we all know that we're doing that, but I think it's just the whole fear of you're constantly walking on edge, if that makes sense. You don't feel like that, one day I could be working 30 days every single day of the month for one particular agency and then, not work for them again for 8 months. So it's, again, having that whole support and balance thing, I think, which is really important. So, I have both, to answer your question, and I find it quite easy to handle as long as you stay on top of it. And I keep a little shoebox under my bed, so literally everything I buy, I'm like, receipt in that box, receipt in that box. So as long as you, again, stay on top of everything, I have no problem with PAYE and self-employed at the same time. I think it works for a lot of performers because we're constantly doing lots of different things in this country, in Europe, etc., etc. So, yeah.
Okay, all good. And I think, you've touched in on it, actually, and that's, is it viable nowadays for freelancers, for these promotional staffing or event staff to make an actual real living from this? Or is it still that on-the-side job whilst they're training and stuff? What are you guys, seeing on your front, in the agency life? Is this temporary staff or is this their profession?
Honestly speaking, when I first started doing promotional stuff or experiential stuff, I never ever, and this is me being really honest here, I never ever thought that it would get me to where I am today. It sounds a little bit like kind of emotional speech, but I used to just do a lot of performing stuff with my agent, and sometimes you kind of hit like a brick wall and you kind of feel like, oh, I'm going to auditions and I'm not getting anywhere. I kind of get to the final cut and they go, oh, your hair's too short, and then you get cut. Silly things like that. But then I just started doing promotional work, and from doing promotional work, you meet so many different people and so many different brands and so many different companies and stuff. And that's, again, touching back on the whole support thing, it's about, if, let's say, for example, Uber are going to be coming into this world, are they just going to keep everybody at the same level? Are they just going to be like, well, you're a brand ambassador and that's it, you're never ever going to level up from there? With agencies that I've worked with, they've kind of gone, okay, well, you've done brand ambassador work. How do you feel about event management work? Or how do you feel about becoming an assistant event manager? Or, you're quite passionate about tech stuff. Would you consider maybe going and doing a conference, maybe speaking on a stage like this, And again, this was the same thing, how I was approached for this particular event right here, that the agency or the company saw the potential and was like, we'd love to push you further and take you higher up. And you can, again, using my performance skills that I've trained in, it's taken me down a path where there is potential for you to have a career almost in practically anything. So
cool. Tim, would you back that up? Have you seen a big change in the type of people you have in the database? Or
I would say definitely there is definite scope for it to be a full-time career for people. It still also is very much used as a sort of secondary job whilst people pursue performance or acting careers, students. I would say that certainly with the growth of this kind of work, that it can be a career path. But it's so important that we make sure that we educate the wider market about the skills that it requires, the salary that would need to be paid, that it's not just bodies, it's people who are highly skilled, highly trained, can be developed, can really take the career to the next step. But where you have someone like Uber, we keep coming back to Uber, the baddie, where you have somebody like Uber coming in, cutting costs, opening up the market, I think that is a real challenge, because you find then a lot of clients within the wider market are going for that, and then that really does stop people from being able to take it into a career in which they can actually have a really good life and be well paid and be looked after and work on really exciting and interesting campaigns and bring the entire industry up. I think that's a really important part of it as well, that kind of understanding that, we are looking for really highly skilled people. We don't want a general dumbing down of the industry. And agencies have a part to play in that development of people and keeping the industry at a high standard.
I would say from a booker's perspective, what you're saying about the individuals being skilled, if we employ someone or get someone in for an event and they are amazing, I will always then instantly think of that person for other clients, or, request Kim to have the same person. If we had a campaign that was lasting, 4 months or whatever it may be, I would personally want to meet every single individual, make sure that they have the right skills, but also client-facing. People buy from people, so they have to be the right person, the right fit for that job. And in terms of the demand being there, we're always looking for event staff, but it is, if you lose that middleman, I guess, who kind of vets these people, make sure that they are skilled, that they are the right fit, I personally wouldn't use that platform to book unless it was for flyering or something that's not as personal as selling a product or being the face of an event. That's kind of how we...
I think, Susanna, sort of legally, is the UK employment law set up to help this growth of this industry?
I think that at the moment, being slightly cynical, where we're being pushed is towards employing. So I think you're going to find that your model, where you're actually employing your temporary agency, is the model that's going to end up being pushed. So the self-employed status, I'm afraid, is being rocked. And there's a little bit of that that's being driven by HMRC. All right, it's about raising money. They've seen that they believe there's a loophole where lots of people are paying themselves dividends rather than being taxed properly and paying NI. And I regret to say, I think that drives where we're seeing the legislation moving. And we have some really big changes, as you know, coming in 2020 with IR35, which is going to affect people who are in those situations where you're actually booking them in for maybe a month or 2-3 month phases. However, what I do think is really interesting is that we're going to have a conflict, because actually where we're moving, how people are working is fundamentally changing. People want to work flexibly. People don't want to be staying in jobs for years on end. They want to move. They want to have experiences. They want to be in control and direction of their lives. So what I believe will happen is that in the next 10 years, we're going to see a radical change in the way in which people work, how they work, and where they work. There'll be lots more home working. And because of that, there will be a pushback, because people will want to have the flexibility to do that. So we're going to find, just like we did 5 years ago, where the law was quite straightforward on this thing, the courts would look at what contract existed between the individuals, and they would say, right, if you decided that you were going to be self-employed, that's what you agreed, and we will honour that. It's only in the last few years that we've seen the courts now looking and saying, oh, tell us something that might be different to what you've agreed. And they literally then allow themselves to jump over the contract, and they're then looking at the relationship. Do I think we'll be having this discussion in 5 years' time and everything will be on its head again? Yes, I do.
Yeah, no, that totally makes sense. We've only got 5 minutes left. Guys, if you have got questions, please do send them in. I guess in the last 5 minutes, I'm just going to give each of you a minute to sort of just, what is the future of staffing in the events market? How do you see it based on what we talked Are people going to be self-employed? Are they going to be finding work through platforms? Are we going to keep staffing agencies and that person's touch? How do you see it panning out? If you were looking in that sort of magical ball, what would you say?
I think what Susanna was saying, people do want that flexibility. So I guess I'm in a different position to where Kim is, for example. We will always need event staff. Like I said earlier, we can't afford to have a huge team of people all the time. So it is just looking at how, for us as bookers, I would always want that personal touch.
Yep.
Doesn't matter if you've got a million agencies that you can have 100 staff instantly. That is no benefit to me if they can't do the job that we need to do. So for me, it's not about what a person looks like, it's the skills. So before, I think you would employ event staff to fit within a certain look and feel of the event. However, now we're looking a lot more at what they can offer, how they engage with the public and the customer, can they sell the brand? So that's kind of what we're looking for.
Cool.
And will be moving forward, I guess.
Yeah.
I think to touch on the future of the way we work in general, because I think what you were saying was so interesting. I think that, yes, everybody does want to work far more flexibly. They want a portfolio, a career. A lot of our angels, our staff that work with us, they absolutely love this work because of the variety, because it keeps them interested, it keeps them engaged, and also the social aspect, working with the team, and also the chance to develop, as you were saying. And so I think that the way that it moves, it's got to have you want a workplace and you want a culture, whether you're there for 5 minutes or 50 years. And I think that's going to be a really interesting thing to see what happens with that level of flexible working and the utilization of digital platforms, maintaining those personal relationships and that kind of workplace development and making sure that people are engaged and inspired.
Nima?
Just again, from a person who is on the floor or meeting the public or working with the public, I would say, as you were saying, there's a new agency opens every day. There's new staffing agencies that message you or spot you at events every day, all the time. But for me, going into the future, I think, regardless of whatever happens in terms of the pay aspect, etc., I think it's always going to come down to the support and the loyalty. I think for me personally, I think if that agency is supporting you and giving you what you need and you're giving them what they need, that collaboration of teamwork, it's going to remain, amazing all the time. So I think, like I said, if there could be you could be a part of 100 different agencies, and you could be self-employed, but if there's that one particular agency that, you build a relationship with the booker and you build a relationship with the actual office themselves, and they provide support for you in, because we all go through hardships, in terms of money issues, family issues, personal issues. If they're supporting you from that angle, as well as, okay, look, we've got this work for you and we're really going to try and push you to the next level and get you in a career that you maybe want to consider, then, I think that's the amazing thing about this industry. So I would just hope that the support and teamwork is always there from everybody.
Great. I think we're pretty much just about out of time. Is there any questions we can do it the old-fashioned way as well, with the hands up? Yeah, there we go, lovely. I'll just run down with the mic for you. There we go.
Hi, thank you. Very, very interesting. Thank you so much. My name is Sarah. I actually work for Coupon.
All right.
One of the things that I was wondering, there's a difference between traditional agencies and these on-demand platforms. Obviously, it's like you have cars and bikes, they're not all the same. There's a big difference between Ferraris and Volkswagen and so on and so forth. So, for example, Coupa, we do pay holiday pay, national insurance. We look after people. They're all employed by us. And we actually do have a very strict vetting system when it comes to right to works and people coming to the office, and we go through all of that. My question is, especially obviously for unicorn events, do you think it's clear enough to differentiate between, all the new agencies that are coming up? Because we've been around since 2009, as a Swiss company. and we have like proper backing of 45 million pounds nowadays. No, US dollars, I should say.
Right.
But still,
It's the same thing now,
it's small
yeah, it's the
detail.
same,
So I can imagine that if you go online, how do you differentiate? Because it's an app, it all looks like websites. How do you know there's actually a backing of, that we can look after people when it's needed, which is very important, what you highlighted as well. So that's my question, really.
Cool.
Sorry, that was very long.
Great question.
Thank you. I think for us as the booker, my biggest fear is with an agency like Kooples, for example, is although they might on paper have all the skill sets and everything, you don't know who that person is going to be until they turn up, because it's the whole first impressions, meeting someone. I think that would be my biggest fear, is that someone turns up, they can be great, but actually they're not the right character fit for what we need. So we've used Kooples before, and we will continue to use them. But I think we enjoy that, getting to know the staff, because it isn't just another person. We don't want to put just anyone, because it's an event that I've been working on for 4 months, 5 months, and then the delivery, I'll be behind the scenes running around. The people at the front are who we are entrusting our month's planning to, essentially. And if a guest comes along and it's not the right sort of person, then that's the whole event that has that negative tinge to it, I guess. So in terms of it being clear, perhaps it's just with event agencies, I do feel we're very fickle in the sense that, if you have a good connection with someone or you have a network of people, that will be the first port of call that you go to. And then you go to, the web and try and find a solution if you can't find it within your existing network. So it's a different market. Yeah, exactly. I do.
Yeah.
There is a space for everybody. It's just, I think different types of events will be suited for the different platforms available. I think mass brand ambassadors or something like that would be suited to Kooples, for example, but more niche events, I guess, I'd feel more comfortable going through someone where there is a middleman and I can express what we need, and then they can be individually vetted rather than an algorithm online, which is essential. I mean, my knowledge isn't great, so I'm sure you've got the right vetting and whatnot. And also, I know that Kooples as well offers skills training and all of that, and certifications for more technical roles that may be required. So it's just, I guess it's new technology for us as well, and learning how to use that new technology and incorporating that into our day-to-day. And trust element as well,
Cool. Any other questions the old-fashioned way? All right, well, I think that's our time up. I just want to say thanks for everyone turning up. Really good debate, and obviously we're here if you want to continue the discussion afterwards. Thanks very much.
Thank you, our panelists.